John, I'm turning it over to you.
Okay, thank you. And welcome everybody. To get started this morning, I'd like to read a message from Chris Jorgensen, which I admit to having solicited. The International Association of Attunement Practitioners attunement event at the Oakwood Retreat Center in Selma, Indiana, is being attended by 50 attunement practitioners from the United States, Canada, South Africa, and Australia this weekend. The theme of the event is attunement, past, present, and future, being a beacon of light and service in the world. We are actively sharing attunement with each other and our larger world, accommodating and giving voice to being, having a planetary experience. Good to feel connected with our colleagues and friends in Indiana this way. There is a great amount of revered poetry in the world of literature, in all human cultures and languages. Poetry is defined in my dictionary as writing that formulates a concentrated imaginative awareness of experience in language chosen and arranged to create a specific emotional response through meaning, sound, and rhythm. That definition is longer than some poems. I think of a poem as imagery and meaning expressed through spare, carefully chosen words which touch the heart. I admire the work of anyone, past or present, skilled in this language art. We might think, for examples, of famed poets such as Shakespeare and Rumi, Homer and Milton, Poe, Walt Whitman, Lao Tzu, Maya Angelou, Robert Frost, Pablo Neruda, and on. And they're profound, insightful, and lasting inspirational works. To me, however, nothing new or old surpasses the poetry found in the King James Version of the Bible. I have it on reasonable authority, Wikipedia, that in the 7+ years from 1604 to 1611, the King James Version of the Bible was produced by 47 translators, most of them leading biblical scholars in England. The New Testament was translated from the Greek, the Old Testament from Hebrew and Aramaic. The book of Psalms in the Old Testament contains 150 poetic writings, many attributed to King David during his reign in Israel around 1000 BCE. Some of the Psalms are considered to be of far more ancient origin, however, dating back before human history as we know it, and older than any religion. The 24th Psalm, a treasured favorite, has to me that ancient, timeless quality. It begins, The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. A full understanding of that single line would change the world. Most people imagine the earth is ours to do with as we please. But more than ever these days, many see the fallacy of that belief. That attitude has wrought havoc on this planet, our home. You may have noticed, as I did, a reminder of this seen on a climate change demonstrator's placard. There is no planet B. What about my personal earth, my physical body? And who is the Lord to whom it belongs? The Old English root of the word Lord means loaf giver. The Lord, personally, for our planet, for all creation, is the provider of the bread of life. We humans, as earthly creatures, are not the sources of the life we experience. Life is a gift of the loaf giver. Planet Earth, all who inhabit it, and everything else belong to and are in reality one with the provider of life. In fact, everything that exists is a manifestation of this one. Here are two more lines from this uplifting poem. Who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord? Or who shall stand in his holy place? He that hath clean hands and a pure heart, who hath not lifted up his soul unto vanity, nor sworn deceitfully. As we unpack the symbolic language in this poetic expression, its transcendent imagery is revealed. The hill of the Lord is an elevated state of consciousness in which, among other things, human beings know the loaf giver's presence. Who will ascend into that experience? Who will rise into holiness, which is spiritual wholeness? The answers are given in the next line. Having clean hands refers to clear and clean actions in living, free of self-serving motivations. Pure hearts are not beguiled by the darkness of ignorance, but are filled with light. Our souls are our facilities for living on earth. In a line from another ancient poem in the book of Genesis, we see that in the beginning, man was created of the material, the substance of the earth. And the Lord God breathed into him the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Our souls were not and are not created to subsist in the vanity of a false identity, but to be one with God on earth. Swearing deceitfully has to do with living a lie rather than expressing the truth of ourselves. So here is a concise 4-part instruction for ascending the hill into oneness with the source of life. If I've waxed a little professorial here, it's my wishing to illustrate how the way to know the truth of ourselves was and is already provided for human beings and has been from way, way back. In recent decades, heritage seed banks have been established here and there in the world in an effort to preserve and protect plant life in seed form in the event of large-scale catastrophe or cataclysm. To the countries and people maintaining these seed banks, they're vitally important projects. Maybe a few sense there's something big in the offing. The word cataclysm derives from Greek roots meaning to flood, to wash. And catastrophe also has a Greek origin meaning to overturn. The human condition could use a good washing and overturning. So this may well be something to rejoice about. But for ages before safeguarding plant seeds became popular, and since, heritage seeds of a different kind have been sown. Some of their essences are preserved within the forms of words. Light seeds are meant to germinate and grow in human consciousness. And they do when the right conditions are present. Metaphorically, these conditions are fecund soil, adequate moisture, warmth, sunlight, and time. Or in terms of the 24th Psalm, a pure heart, clean hands, no vanity, no deceit. Impure hearts are not fertile. That soil is hardpan, toxic. There's little chance for light seeds to germinate and grow under those conditions. The poetic words of the 24th Psalm have been around for millennia. And countless people have read them and heard them and marveled at their beauty and wondered about their true meaning. Generations of scholars have sought to extract, to dig out the meanings of such writings. But that's akin to digging up bean seeds in a garden plot to see if they're sprouting. Kind of foolish and futile. The conditions essential to germinating light seeds must be provided by the gardener. And who are the gardeners? Who was and is created to dress and keep the garden. Collectively, we haven't been doing a great job of caring for Garden Earth, but we are each divinely equipped to do so, if we will. The opposite of digging around trying to unearth the truth is what we might call radiant seeing and radiant hearing. We may believe we read words on a page, for example, but we actually perceive those symbols in our own consciousness, right? We see truly only by expressing sufficient light to illuminate what we're looking at. If we don't let our light shine, we don't see. And we hear truly as we generate sufficient atmosphere to convey the sound, the tone of spirit. Absent that atmosphere, we're effectively deaf. It then seems that spirit isn't present. What a forlorn state. If we do not see and hear for ourselves what is true and real, we're left with only what other people tell and show us. And what a mix of stuff that is. Multiply the situation by 7 billion and we have the confused collective human condition. However, as we provide the right conditions, myriad light seeds quickly spring to life in our awareness. The seeds of enlightenment and understanding are already in us, and more than enough to grow a whole garden, a new one. We are made in the image and likeness of God, the loaf giver, after all. And before all, too. Without the living experience of this reality, we're make-believe people existing in a make-believe world. In this state, just about everyone is captivated by an illusory self, which convincingly presents itself as real. There is a way, however, to come out of this state. Let's look at one more powerful line from the 24th Psalm. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be ye lift up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. This divine invitation and promise is offered to each and every individual human being, as well as to the mass body of humanity as a singular whole. The individual King of glory is the focus of life animating each person. The angel, or God being incarnate, the loaf giver. For the whole body of humankind, there is likewise a King of glory, one who has long been excluded, in fact, from almost all human experience. This king is not the figurehead of religious belief. As long as human consciousness holds itself captive in the realm of belief, the King of Glory cannot come in. Lift up your heads. Turn attention upward in humility. Lift your heart and mind in love. And the King of Glory fills your soul. Note that the verse says, the King of Glory shall come in, not might. No babies. Open wide the gates and doors of mind and heart, and welcome the ever-present one. Then we discover and know, as my favorite Zen teacher, Sherry Huber, says, what I am seeking is causing me to seek, because it is me. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. Who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord? Or who shall stand in his holy place? He that hath clean hands and a pure heart, who hath not lifted up his soul unto vanity, nor sworn deceitfully. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be ye lift up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of Glory shall come in. Here in just 4 lines of exquisite poetry from this ancient psalm is the secret of life hidden in plain sight. Everything anyone needs to know, to experience, know, and be who they really are. And no beliefs are necessary. I invite whoever wishes to add to today's consideration.
John, I'd love to join my voice in the spirit that's moving here, and thankful for the spirit of your words and this hour of attunement. I'm glad you started out with that, because it lifts the consciousness to know that there are so many beings that are aware spiritually and moving on this current of attunement. And I know it goes beyond just this phone connection and all this technology, but to know that we feel that in times like this. Sanford began with a familiar hymn to me. I grew up with it in the Methodist Church and have loved it ever since. A Sweet Hour of Prayer. And as I was thinking of the words, and our spiritual consideration this morning was looking beyond the words and seeing what the Spirit of the words are. I think when I was in that Methodist church, Sweet Hour of Prayer, we were bathed in the feeling of prayer, and the prayer in the human sense of, praying that all is well and all the human things that humans pray for. But in the current of the Spirit, I'm thinking of, this is the Lord's Prayer saying, who is it? Who is it that will stand with me in the consciousness of releasing Spirit? And it, as you said, the loaf giver. The Lord has given everything that we have been provided with to let the Spirit be released. And I love the mention of the seeds, the light seeds. And in this hour so strongly, with this global consciousness, I feel light seeds being released and such agreement with that Spirit. Thank you, John.
Hi, John. This is Chris. First of all, thank you, John, for venturing into that realm we call poetry. And certainly, just as you say, you can't find more beautiful poetry than that which is contained in the Bible. And then there's the poetry, perhaps we could say, of that eternal reality of presence that is the truth of who we are. And what a wonder, John, that we have this opportunity in this present life journey to become increasingly conscious of this presence that nothing can disturb, nothing can threaten, and yet it is available to be given expression in the most sort of simple or ordinary moments of our living. It doesn't have to be some special occasion. That this indwelling angel quite happy to share his or her light with someone serving coffee in a coffee shop or John, just to say thank you. And one other line of poetry I've always loved from the Bible, but that blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Thank you, John.
Chris, thank you for adding your presence and speaking your presence to us.
Hi, John. This is Bill in Atlanta. Thank you for your beautiful words and your spirit today. We can see that all that is necessary for the true experience of man and woman is present. When we tend and keep the garden, by letting our light shine and providing the right atmosphere in our living, then a whole new state is known. and it's first known in our consciousness. We have a garden consciousness, and that consciousness begins to be reflected in our world. Our world is simply a reflection of our consciousness. And we invite others in our world to share this consciousness. Thank you again, John, for our time together today.
Hey, John, it's been an absolute delight to move in the Spirit with you and everyone else this morning, and to feel the presence of the Lord in the room, in the house where I am. That's not as far-fetched as it might sound to some people. It's actually close and near at hand when one considers, for example, that there's far more to the word Lord than loaf giver, as far as definition is concerned, and we begin to feel that it relates to such things as Elohim and Emmanuel and Adonai, and we recognize that it is a word that describes certain characteristics of the evidence of the presence of spiritual qualities as they are incarnate in man and woman and in nature. Shekinah, for example, evidence of the presence of the loaf giver. And the loaf is present on the mantle over there as I look across the room here in my house. So it's something that's quite immediate, and it occurs to me that every gathering where the Spirit is alive, and that's simply life, isn't it? The Spirit is alive. I'm alive. But every gathering of people where the Spirit is alive, there are representations through the individuals who are present of certain qualities and essences of spirit and being and presence, one's own true nature as it relates to one's own presence as a God being in human form, each one bringing something unique and different, a focus of certain spiritual qualities. And, you know, in this gathering right now, you can feel that that's present, that all that is necessary in terms of the focalizations of qualities of spirit to give the great loaf, you might say, to feed the masses that are hungry in the world are present by reason of what is present right here in this house, the house of this teleconference call. Just with this small grouping of people, everything necessary in terms of the provision of the loaf giver is at hand. And as we recognize that, well, what is represented by the King of Glory is right here, right now. The evidence of the presence is right here, right now. And so it's been beautiful, very beautiful to move in this rich consideration with you, John. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
Hi, John, this is Volker. I've been trying to wrap my mind around a little calculation of how many times these words that you quoted may have been cited in the history of humankind. You mentioned they are thousands of years old. Many, many generations of people have listened to these words. They've been probably cited in synagogues and churches. I would say even today, this very day, probably within the last hour, it stands to reason that there are probably thousands of churches where people heard exactly the same words. So I think it's going to be mind-boggling numbers of people who've heard these words and had some inkling that these words are meaningful and should be expressed in their living. As you said, in 4 lines, the secret of life revealed. And yet, one suspects that very few people actually have that experience of oneness with the Lord. So I really appreciate the many comments that came and your own words, in the end, emphasizing our own personal experience, our own living poetry in what we're actually factually doing, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, to have the experience of attunement that we started with, to have the experience of that hallelujah, even before we spoke words. That is really ultimately the only thing that counts. Words have been spoken for so many millennia, and clearly the evidence is that few have understood. To have the experience in our own living and to share that experience with others, that is where the current spiritual frontier is. And it's delightful that we have participants in that.
Thank you, Volker.
And this is Joyce. As Volker said, it's an experience. The word behind the words, where we feel each other. We know a sense of connection and communion. The beautiful invitation of the Lord is, come be with me. And in that receiving of the invitation, there's a sense that one is never alone. There is that sense of great love, a great love that in one's own heart feels protected, alive. And beyond that, the great desire to share that with others and to know that together, to know that this is the true state. We can talk about things, but it's in the feeling through the heart that we know it and we experience it. And I celebrate today, I celebrate what David was saying about our experience in this room together, of knowing this beautiful focus that we share and note as we send it out on the lines of our own individual worlds and collectively in this moment. So thank you for the genuine expression of spirit now.
John, I just wanted to answer and join all the beautiful expressions to answer the Lord and say, I will stand in the hill of the Lord, and I will stand in my holy place. And that may to many sound like extreme arrogance, but it's what he has called us to stand with him in his holy place, and only then are we in our holy place. I thank you so for the opportunity to participate with you all.
Hi, John. It's Bill here. I'm hearing these words which are so resonant and lovely in a sort of different way, actually. The statement, the simple beginning statement, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. It's the whole thing. It's all settled. We can relax. It's all done. You know, there's nothing else to do in a way. And there's actually, from the perspective of that reality, there's nothing to achieve in a certain sense. There's certainly not from the perspective of acquisition of anything. There is the movement of the creative movement of life, the rhythms that are moving throughout the whole, the fullness of it all, and the world, right down to the details of the human state, all of it. There's nothing's left out. No one is left out. No thing is left out. No atom is left out. All whole. One whole. There's a great calm in this, actually. A great peace. Great relaxation. No contest required. And I think that feeling, experience in me, in us, provides a pattern of resonance for others to touch. This is a settled matter, as they say in the, in the kind of legal world. You know, the whole is the whole. And it's lovely to be together with all of us who carry that pattern of understanding stretched around the world.
Thank you, Bill. And thank you to everyone who has added to this generative hour together. Light seeds germinate in the heart and then are recognized by the mind. Everything we look at, everything we see comes to life because it is, as was emphasized, all part of life. Sanford is prepared to play a 3-minute recording of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir singing the words of the 24th Psalm. And I propose we conclude with that, after which Tom will announce our next teleconference. It's been a wonderful time.
King of glory.